Hello and welcome back to my channel, Mental Health with Melissa. If you're new here, I'm Melissa. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more content as I post new videos every single Wednesday and Sunday. Subscribing to my channel really helps me get mental health information out there to our communities of color and tons of free LCSW test prep for those of you that are studying to become LCSWs. And I have a test prep LCSW study program called Social Work Study with Melissa, and it's available for purchase on my website. The link is down below in the description box if you're interested. For those of you that are new to my channel, thank you so much for stumbling upon this video, and there are hundreds of free LCSW test prep videos along with tons of mental health video informational videos, and even some vlogs that I have posted as day in the life of a therapist. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a PhD psychology research student. Hopefully at the very tail end of my dissertation process, finishing up some research, and hopefully we'll be able to get some stuff published in the near future. Anyway, that's all a mouthful to say. Thanks so much for coming onto this video, and we're going to be taking a look at some very important information, so you're not going to want to miss this. Okay, so if you clicked on this video, then you're interested in learning a little bit more about mandated reporting versus duty to warn. Somebody left a comment in the comment section of one of my other videos requesting to do a video more specifically outlining the differences between mandated reporting versus duty to warn. And while they are key terms in social work practice or even the mental health field, there are key differences to the two. And so today we're going to explore both, and I'm going to do a part 2 video with an actual vignette for you because I know that a lot of you like the vignette style videos. But first, let's do the informational video and get into the details, because this is really, like I said, pertinent information. If you're going to be working in the human service field, then you're going to want to know what the differences are, and we're going to explore them right now. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and first take a look at the definition of mandated reporter. So what is a mandated reporter? So I'm going to read this for those of you that, again, are more auditory learners. I know that some of you are more visual learners, so feel free to pause here and read it yourself. But basically, a mandated reporter is a specific professional or somebody that has some sort of employment or job who is required by law. And again, I'm going to repeat that, by law, to report reasonable suspicions of abuse. So a mandated reporter will have to report to the local authority, so whether that be Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services, Department of Children and Family Services, or DCFS. These are certain types of organizations where mandated reporters usually file the reports with. So each state has a little bit of varying laws regarding mandated reporting and child protective services and adult protective services reporting. So definitely check in with your state's guidelines about mandated reporting. What constitutes as an adult or a child, like age varies, I think, between states. I personally am a mandated reporter in California, so I follow the California's guidelines, which may be different for other states. So I want to talk a little bit about child abuse and or child neglect. I have a whole video on kind of adult protective services and APS, so definitely check that out if you get a chance. For now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at CPS and child reports. So here you can see what child abuse or neglect can look like, and something that you might want to keep in mind as well is that there are warning signs for abuse in children. So those warning signs include warning signs of emotional abuse, physical abuse, neglect and sexual abuse. So for emotional abuse, of course, these may vary, but for emotional abuse, a child may look excessively withdrawn, fearful, anxious, doesn't seem too attached to the parent. Some signs of physical abuse in children may include unexplained bruises or physical sorts of concerns in their body. A child being very watchful or alert, like somebody's going to smack them or something bad might happen to them, is very scared to be touched and flinches. And some neglect signs may be hygiene is malnourished, and there's illnesses or unexplained physical injuries as well. And some signs of sexual abuse include trouble walking or sitting, doesn't want to change clothes, and may feel the need to run away from home often. So those are just some warning signs. So with reporting child abuse or neglect, mandated reporters in California are required by law. So again, required by law to report. So there doesn't have to be any proof. If you're a mandated reporter, you can have just a suspicion and you can make the report and file that with APS. So APS has, of course, different phone numbers depending on which state and county you're reporting to, so be sure to look that up. So a mandated reporter, again, is a specific professional that's required by law to report suspicions of abuse. So this includes social workers, mental health providers, medical providers, educators, teachers, a lot of those sorts of professions that are working with children and also with elderly patients, like those that may work at an assisted living as a nursing aide or a caregiver at an assisted living facility, or those that have disabilities that require their dependence on another adult or individual. So that is what a mandated reporter is. Let's now look at duty to warn. So duty to warn, so I'm going to read this to you. The duty to warn arises when a patient has communicated an explicit threat of imminent serious physical harm or death to a clearly identified or identifiable victim or victims, and the patient has the apparent intent and ability to carry out such a threat. Okay, so what this means is that somebody that may be expressing homicidal ideation, so homicide meaning to kill or to murder, or any sort of ideation to seriously harm another individual, and expresses this to their therapist or their mental health provider or their health provider, that provider has the duty to warn, meaning they have the duty to inform the victim as soon as possible and then inform the authorities. So that would be the police. So this has come about from a very specific law, which many of you are probably familiar with, which is the Tarasoff Law, which was, so in particular, it's the Tarasoff versus Regents of the University of California law, where this is in 1985, where a patient told his psychotherapist that he had a plan to kill an unnamed but very identifiable woman in the therapy session. Later, he killed that woman. And so the woman, the parents of the woman then sued the therapist for not warning them or the daughter that was killed about the very intended threat. And so at that time, the California Supreme Court rejected the therapist's claim that he owed no duty to the woman because she was not his patient, holding that if a therapist determines or reasonably should have determined that a patient poses a serious danger of violence to others, that he or she bears a duty to exercise reasonable care to protect the foreseeable victim of that danger. So, in 1985, like I mentioned, California legislature codified the Tarasoff Rule, which is a California law that provides that a psychotherapist has a duty to protect or warn a third party if the therapist actually believed or predicted that the patient posed a serious threat or risk of inflicting any sort of injury or upon a reasonable identifiable victim. So that is kind of what started the duty to warn. It's again that 1985 Tarasoff Rule, and a lot of other states have taken that same approach, but I'm not too familiar with other states' guidelines. This is primarily California, but I use that example to kind of demonstrate the differences between a mandated reporter versus duty to warn. So again, with a mandated reporter, that is somebody that by law is required to report any abuse or neglect to vulnerable populations, such as children, disabled people, or elderly people or dependent adults. Duty to warn is when a patient has very clearly communicated a victim to a therapist, and not even very clearly communicated. If there's some communication, but it is clear who the victim is, then the therapist has the duty to warn the victim, again, to warn the victim and let the victim know, and then also notify the appropriate authorities. Okay, I hope that video was helpful. Again, that is a very important sort of thing to know because it gets a little bit confusing sometimes with some of these different requirements of social workers or those that work in human services about these different terms that get thrown around, like Tarasoff, mandated reporter, duty to warn. And so we definitely want to make sure that we have an understanding of what these things mean. So let me know if you have any further questions in the comments section. Stay tuned for the part 2 video so we can kind of go over a vignette. Until next time, managing mental health matters.